Hello, hello. This is week 7 of lab. And today is going to be hopefully a short video as long as I can stop myself from rambling um, on just two advanced features. So one is custom fonts and the second is custom backgrounds or background images. And so let's take a look at what we've got. This is where we left off in week 6, this lovely page here. Two-column layout. So nearly all of you should have sites that look infinitely better than this. But one thing that you can do if you've finished, putting the content in your site and you've finished uh, uh, most of the, basic design and layout work is to really do something to make your sites pop, to make your sites look custom, to make your sites look like you've got, um, some modern design eye or something like that. So to do that, one thing we can do is we can use custom fonts. And there's lots of different ways to implement custom fonts. I'm a big fan of Google Fonts. It's an open source font. There's 632 fonts available for you for free, right? And so let's find something. And I like to actually go through the paragraph viewer to try to find a nice paragraph font. Um, because you can kind of see it in context of other things. Like this looks really nice to me, this Varela round. Um, but spend some time and find a really nice font for your body text. Find a really nice font that would work well for large amounts of text that would look nice on your site. And one that I like to use is Open Sans. It's my favorite. And so this is what it looks like in a paragraph. And so when you find a font you want to use, you just click the Quick Use. And the cool thing is they've got all sorts of different options too, right? So they've got the normal, which is what I use on my site, but they've got normal italic, they've got semi-bold, bold, etc. So you can implement any or all of these. And so if you click the font that you want to use, you can select them using these check boxes. Okay. So basically what you do then, once you've selected your font, is you go to step 3, which is add this code to your website, and it's just a link to the Google API, and you paste it into the head of your HTML document. So let's open up my HTML document in Text Wrangler. And so we go to the head, and we can go anywhere in the head, but I like to put it after the link to the style sheet. We can link to Open Sans, which is the font that we just selected. Okay, so I'm going to save this as week7.html, and that's step 1. So step 1 is, okay, we've linked to the Google API here. Let's then actually use this style, right? And so to use the style, we go back to this, and this is what you can use to use the style. And this looks very familiar to you. It's the property font family. And instead of choosing Arial or Times New Roman or some other font family, we're going to choose Open Sans because we've put it in our HTML document. Okay. So I am going to copy this. I'm going to go back into my CSS, and I'm just going to make all of my paragraph text Open Sans because it's a really nice text for paragraph, or it's a really nice font for paragraph text. And I'm actually going to make all my list items Open Sans as well. So paragraphs and lists. And let's see what happens. Here's our site. You can see, and now you can see that the Open Sans font is now being used, right? So you can see it's definitely being, let me blow it up, it's definitely being used in our paragraphs, and it's definitely being used in our ordered list, but not being used in our ordered lists. So one thing we need to do is, I forgot to also add ordered lists to this style. So let's update it. And okay, now we've got open sans being used for all of our body text. Right, so pretty cool. Looks pretty good. Looks a lot better than the font we were using before. And then we can look for, you know, we can go back to Google Fonts and look for, you know, a cool font for a header, right? So looking for an interesting font for a header. Let's see. I'm going to make sure it's a serif font. I don't want any handwriting, and I don't want monospace. So let's see what we can find. This looks like a pretty cool header font. So I'm going to try it. Della Respira. So again, I've got to copy this and put it into my HTML document head. So you can add as many or as little fonts as you want, right? So now I've added 2 different fonts. Now I'm going to go back to Google and copy the CSS, property and value. And let's make our header 2s Della Respira. So all of our body text will be open sans, all of our header 2s will be Della Respira. And let's see what this looks like. I don't love it, but it's better. So that's header 2, Della Respira. Header 1 we haven't specified, so it hasn't changed. But you can see choosing fonts can really sort of make your work, make your sites look much more custom, like much more design thought and effort went into them. So that's how to use fonts. One last thing I will say is, actually 2 things. One is, look here at the page load time. Anything in the green is good. So I wouldn't really worry about using as many or as little fonts as you want, as long as they're in the green. Once we get into the yellow zone, I would advise not using the font. That just means it takes a long time for your end user, to be able to load the font for it to be able to work. So keep that in mind. And then the second thing is, this stuff we added to the head of our document. It has to go in all of your HTML documents, right? So it's not going to magically work on your resume page if you've only put it on your home page, okay? So you would have to copy and paste this text, and you'd have to put it in all of your documents, or all of your pages. So if you've got 4 pages on your website, you'd have to go and do that 4 times, which is fine. But just keep that in mind as well, okay? So that's custom fonts. Another quick thing I do want to show you is with using percentages for layouts. Okay, so we did percentages for layouts for our nav, which is 30% of our screen, or 30% of our container, and our content, which is 70% of our container. We can actually use percentages for padding and margins as well. And that's good to know. So this obviously looks terrible, right? So all of these things lined up right up against the left margin. We would want to move these over a little bit. But what happens if you add padding to the left of this is it's going to spill over onto the next line. And this is happening because this is set to 30% and this is set to 70%. Anything you add, any padding you add, is going to increase it past 100%, right? And we don't want that. That doesn't look good. So what we would do then is we could actually use percentages in our padding and we could change our width to 67%. And so if these, as long as these two add up to our original figure, which was 70%, it's going to stay in the same design, right? So in this case, now we've moved this over 3%, and that looks a whole lot better, right? So we've got a little bit of space here. It looks a little bit better. And so this sort of leads me to the next little mini lesson here on putting finishing touches on your design. One thing you're going to want to do then is you're going to want to think about spacing and things like that, right? So just like you think about spacing in a Word document, spacing between your bullets, spacing between lines and paragraphs, you have to think about that too on your HTML documents. And the only difference though is with spacing, in CSS, sometimes you have to set these things manually because they're all just going to the default, right? So it's important then to think about spacing, like maybe you want to put more space between your bullets, right? So to do that, maybe we want to put like, so maybe we want to put more space between our bullets and our content. So if we did content, ULLI, and we decided, okay, we want to put margin bottom 10 pixels of space between each bullet. That allows us to space out things much more deliberately, right? Like maybe that's not enough. Maybe we want 20 pixels of space. And so now we've got 20 pixels of space. And that just allows us to, again, make things look more custom. So when you leave everything at the default, everything looks like it's the default. And so spacing things out using margins and paddings to create margins around your content area, et cetera, is going to be really important for you to make your sites appear more custom. Okay. So that's open fonts. The second thing I want to show you is textured backgrounds. And these are really nice to just add a little visual element to your site without making it distracting. So for example, Subtle Patterns is a really nice website for free patterns, background patterns. So here's one, and they allow you to preview them, and you can kind of see what they look like, and et cetera, et cetera. So I'm going to just try this one called Skulls. And let's see if we can get this to work. And so basically what it does is that you download a zip file and you download a PNG file. Okay, and so the PNG file looks just like this. And we can, as long as this is located in the right place, 3200 lab, we can use this skulls.png as our background. So like one thing we could do is, as a background to our body, not our, as a background image to our body, which is this entire thing that's white right now, we can enter skulls.png. So some sort of textured background. Let's see what that looks like. Okay, so it gives it a little bit more pop. It gives it a little more. Character, right? And so that's a really nice and easy way to use a textured background to give your site a little bit more customization. And then you can also do, so that's on the body, which I think is nice, and it's really just a way to introduce something interesting without being too distracting. But you could also, choose a different background for, other elements as well, right? So instead of just a solid color in your header, like maybe we want to use, oops, something like Stardust here, or let me try to find an interesting one. Let's just try Stardust. And again, it's the same thing. It's just a PNG, and we can stop, please. As long as we move the file to the right location, we can just link right to it in our CSS. So like maybe this element, which is our header, I think, we want to put a background image. And let's see what that looks like. Okay, right, and so like it's just a little bit more interesting. It's got a little bit more character than just a solid color. I will caution you though, you don't want to put a background texture on your entire site, especially where lots of content is being presented, right? So you definitely don't want to put, you know, a texture underneath written text or chunks of text, because that's just confusing and makes it more difficult for users to actually read the text, right? But that's just some really simple ways to go, okay, how can I make my site look less like a template, or less like I just learned HTML and CSS, and more like you know, a custom site. And this is all open source, free. And so, you know, if you want light backgrounds, there's light backgrounds. If you want darker backgrounds, you can sort by darker backgrounds. Or, you know, grids are always cool. If we can actually get it to load. Obviously, I just killed it. Noise. I just killed it. Anyways, subtlepatterns.com. Really nice, you know, really nice website. It's got 375 open source free patterns, and you can use them to really kind of spice up your site a little bit. What else? What else? I think that's it. Oh, and I also will say, using these patterns, like this pattern skulls, is infinitely more interesting and infinitely more modern than a gradient, right? So like gradients were really cool. Everybody liked to do them a few years back, but they're just really not that compelling of a design anymore, right? And so using these little subtle textures and backgrounds, I think is quite nice. So that's it. Google Fonts, subtlepatterns.com. Spice up your sites. I hope to see some really interesting sites. I hope to see some really fun sites. So good luck. Please come see me in office hours if you have any questions, comments, concerns, etc. And I will see you all Wednesday.